Hello, everyone, and good day to you. A warm welcome to today's webinar. So, my name is Abayomi Ogunjobi. I am your host for today. And just as a form of introduction, I'm the co-founder and director at Penetree. And I must say that I'm privileged to be a member of the board of directors at Fiduciary Services Limited. So, Fiduciary Services Limited is basically a private client and fiduciary services focused firm located in Victoria Island, Lagos, Nigeria, that's in West Africa. And I must say that we're delighted to have you all join us today for conversations in wealth management. And, without any further ado, right, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the moderator of this session. With almost 2 decades of professional proficiency and acumen, our moderator for today, Mercy Edukoho Amina, is the founder and executive director of Fiduciary Services Limited. Mercy is a passionate corporate solicitor. She's actually a friend of mine, right? And also she's actually a governance expert, a chartered secretary and administrator. She's also a trust and estate practitioner. And, most importantly, she's a family wealth advisor. She has a whole lot of experience in that area. Messi and I have worked together in different capacity, and I can tell you that, she has experience and knowledge in the area of the topics that we're speaking about today. So Messi leads and manages the wonderful team of Fiduciary Services Limited, and she has done an exceptional work in leading the team in what they've achieved from inception even up until now. So Messi, it's my pleasure to hand over to you to go on with the session.
Thank you so much, Abayomi. Yeah, so it's really good to be here and to have our panelists already ready to take us on our conversations today. So it's so much pleasure. This is a biannual webinar where we just speak with industry experts within the field of wealth management, family wealth advisory, family business advisory, family governance advisory. And we try to speak with them to understand what are the trends and dynamics from their day-to-day practice, from their day-to-day work that are affecting the lives and legacies of those they serve, the families and the individuals that they serve. So it's our pleasure to have everyone join us today as we continue with our conversation. So this is the third in the series, and we do hope that we would have more of this series to come in the near future. Without much ado, Anbern Guarrine is a facilitator of family play, using fun as a tool for learning, communication, and planning for family businesses. She is an experienced facilitator with a demonstrated history of working in the professional training and coaching industry. She has worked with family businesses since 2009, helping craft family governance structures and facilitating family meetings, team buildings, and retreats. She is skilled in using games and play for training program design, training delivery, coaching, strategic planning, and leadership development. It's also a pleasure to have Anbern join us. Like we've already shared, we are trying to make sure that the industry that we serve, that the clients that we serve, that they do get value and they understand what are the issues that they should be cognizant of. And really, when you work within the wealth management space, the family wealth management space, I know that you do tend to have to want to get to the nitty-gritty, the granular details. I mean, it becomes really, because that's really the value that you put on the table. Anbern is joining us from Chicago. And I know she joined right about 5:30 in the morning, thereabouts. So it's really a pleasure to have Anbern stay with us and want to share as much of what she does on a day-to-day with us. Anytime I think about Anbern, I think about a communications expert. So if you do have issues within your families, if there are issues with conflict, communication issues, family conflicts, managing family dynamics and all that, that is what Anbern does. And she does it so, so well. as the facilitator family play at the Guarrine group. So she uses fun as a tool for learning, for communication, planning, with respect to family businesses and families of wealth. Anbern is an experienced facilitator with a demonstrated history of working in professional training and coaching. She has worked with different family businesses since 2009. She helps to craft their governance structures. She facilitates families meetings, teams building, and retreats. She's skilled in using games and play for training program, for the design, training, delivery, coaching, strategic planning, and leadership development of families. I know this so well. I call her the communications expert when it comes to family owning businesses, when it comes to wealthy families, and the like. So thank you so much, Anbern, for keeping up with us and staying true to this time. So I'm going to ask now, just let us know what are the dynamics, what are the trends and dynamics that are shaping the industry, whether it's the insurance wealth planning industry, whether it's the health insurance planning industry, or whether it's the managing families, managing family dynamics, managing conflict. So what are the trends and dynamics that are shaping the lives of affluent, wealthy families in the spaces that we operate?
Yeah. So for me, I might be, just because of my focus and my interest, I am looking at what conversations are people having. And one of the conversations is Rita and Kieran talked about the pandemic. And so there's a lot of conversation realizing that even though people are wealthy, that they're not really immune to such a global event. Health wise, there really isn't any, like, there's not like a shield that you can wear to prevent you from from getting the after effects of a pandemic. Another conversation that I'm seeing is the development of social justice awareness and what are the roles that family businesses and the family wealth is taking, or what role are they playing in regards to social justice. And then also there's a rising trend of giving the next generation a seat at the table and giving them space to kind of give their thoughts and be part of the decision-making process that we haven't really seen, or at least it hasn't been documented in the generations before. Yeah, so again, for starters, and then I like what Rita had said too about the concern for peace and stability in different parts of the world, and how that affects the individuals, where they put their wealth, in what space in the world that they're putting their wealth in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Anbern. Anbern, I'm going to start with us discussing about conflict. We understand that conflict in families are inevitable. And when you now put assets in the middle, it amplifies it. So the conflict that probably would have been manageable if there were really no assets on the table, it just becomes amplified when you do have significant assets. So, I mean, can you provide insight in the work that you do into how we can proactively identify sources of conflict, and how we can address them before they escalate and tear everybody down or tear everyone apart?
I see that you want to start with a juicy topic first.
Yes,
Yes.
I do.
Yeah, so conflict is not so much an if, it's a when. So we know that when two people come together, there's always a difference in opinion about something, and it will happen. And so what I see is that often behind the conflict is, what values are you protecting? So when people are given a chance to actually talk about why is this important, why are they taking the stand that they're taking, and when both sides are able to see the other person's side to that story, sometimes the conflict is dialed down, and they're able to see each other's point of view. Not all conflicts have to be resolved. For example, in the US political stance, you don't have to convince the other person to take your stance, but to kind of just see why is it that the other person is taking this stand, sometimes that's enough. So it depends on what kind of conflict it is. But in terms of, there are conflicts, for example, in whether or not a prenup should be done. Well, that conflict or that difference in opinion will have to be resolved because the family will have to make a decision about how to move forward. So I think again, when you talk about, or when I talk about conflict, I talk about what are the values that they're trying to protect, and what are they, is there a way to kind of see the other person's perspective and then identify whether or not the family has to have an agreement on this certain topic or whatever it is that they that is in front of them. One of the tools that I really like to use is conversations, but also genogram is a good thing to kind of for us consultants to use, because it helps us see the patterns of conversations that the families have had, or if there's a pattern of conflict. And that helps us, it's not a crystal ball that will help us see the future, but it helps us inform us of what are the conflicts that have happened in the family, and is there a chance that these would again come up in the future. So those are some of the things that I use to not avoid, but to deal with conflicts as they come.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Anbern. So let's talk a bit about communication with families and individuals, affluent and wealthy. We know that when there's a breakdown in communication, it can lead to misunderstanding, and there won't be alignment across the entire activities, whether it's financial, whether it's social, whether it's spiritual. Just talk about the full capitals of wealth. There won't be alignment within the members. What techniques or practices do you recommend to foster empathetic communications among family members? Yeah, given your expertise.
Thank you for that question. So like was mentioned already before, prevention is better than cure. And so if you think of relationships also like a bank, you want to deposit into that relationship so that when the communication breakdown happens, your bank doesn't get into a deficit. And so I really advocate for time for family fun. And often it's like, oh, this is such a pointless activity. You know, why are we even doing this? But it really adds to, again, that relationship and that connection with people. And my husband, when he was director for an outdoor education center, he coined the term fun as fundamental universal need, because for the well-being, as Kieran probably would know from research on longevity and well-being, fun is an important aspect, and human beings look for fun. That's the best way that we can kind of one neuroscientist was saying fun allows us to deal with the not so fun aspects of life. And so again, when you have that strong relationship, when you've put in by creating a strong relationship with people, when there is conflict, it's easier to navigate because you've had history with this person, and you're not taking whatever it is, whatever that situation, you're not taking it negatively. You just know that you just have a disconnect, and somehow you find a way to connect again.
Yeah,
does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you. So, Anbern, I'm going to ask you now, what is the role of fun and play in the legacy planning process? So when you, the work that you do, yeah, somebody would actually think that when you talk about fun and play, that is actually trivial, is not important, is super insignificant. So what is the role that having fun and playing provides when it comes to family dynamics and just group dynamics within families?
Yes. So thank you for that question. So yes, when I start talking to clients and I tell them, oh, I bring play and fun into the room, and they're like, okay, but we want, we want serious things. But as we know, a lot of research is coming out, especially Dan Buettner's longevity. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, the 100 years centenarians. A lot of research is coming out that fun is very essential to health. It's well-being. There's a lot of talk, especially with a pandemic. There's a lot of talk about mental health and how that's important. And fun is actually a crucial element to have to keep us, mentally healthy. But aside from taking care of just the self, neuroscience backs this study, and we have more and more research on play now, where play is very effective in helping us learn new things. We learn so much better when we are playing than if we are like reading books or learning from listening. So one of the things I find is that when I give people the opportunity to play and they get a chance to role play like different personalities or different aspects, it's easier to become more empathetic towards others because you've already had that experience of taking the person's side or taking the person's perspective. It is not a coincidence that people like Einstein, for example, also play an instrument. Because when you're only in one aspect of life, that gets to be a little tedious and that gets to be a little limiting. But when you have an avenue to kind of unwind, he called it collaborative play, where you kind of have an intense issue or an intense problem and you're stuck. You kind of take yourself away from that situation and kind of do something else. A change of scenery sometimes just resets the brain. And so with families, what I find is if I started with them having a play experience, having them kind of take a different role, just kind of let the guard down, and they're laughing and they're getting all these oxytocin and all these hormones. By the time we get to talking about, okay, there is this serious issue that we have to talk about in terms of legacy planning, they are more ready. The brain is more ready and receptive to that conversation because they've already had, the juices kind of flowing in their system. And so that's it seems like initially you look at, oh, play is such a trivial thing. And if you look at the physical, what happens to the body when we are in the state of play, we realize, oh, this is actually crucial, in the same way that exercise is crucial, that eating good food is crucial. Laughter is also crucial. So yeah, that's a role of play in a nutshell.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, I really, just talking about the fact that when you talk about play, the it it enables a lot of positive energy, and you have a lot of positive hormones that you bring out, and that allows you to kind of manage the difficult conversations, allows you to manage the difficult circumstances, and because yeah, it's I think everybody just bonds better with the challenges and just trying to look for positive ways to how will I put it, positive ways to manage as well as stay on top of those challenges when there is that intentional fun and play within the family setup, as in within the family dynamics setup. What I wanted you to also highlight, I know you mentioned it in different ways. Let's talk about longevity or longevity, basically. How do you think this affects HNIs at this time and age? Um, and what would you think everyone should look out for when it comes to longevity?
Yeah, if I could just add to that too, like it's not just the number of years that you add on, right? It's not just I'm living to be 100. It's also about the quality of life. And quality of life includes, your relationships and the people that you're with. My husband has an uncle. He died 5 days shy of turning 100. And he was saying, I look around, I'm the only one left. I don't, my friends are not there anymore. And so, so you have that question too of, okay, so you're living longer, but what kind of life are you living? And so that again brings into the focus of what are the other areas of wealth that you have in your life other than your money and other than your, you have a good insurance that takes care of you medically, but then what other dimensions of wealth do you have and how healthy is it? And we talk about, okay, people are living longer. What does that do to the transfer of wealth from one generation to another? And what does that do to, like you said, insurance? You have increased costs. What does that look like? So, yeah, so it's good that we're living longer and we're having healthier lives. We just want to make sure we have the right stuff that surrounds it as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Very, very important. Thank you so much for that. Um, yeah, before we go, there's a question we have, and yes, and that question is this. He said, what practical tips can one use to persuade a daughter or son to follow unconventional wealth paths?
Okay, so without knowing the actual intent of the question, I am going to take a stab at it in the dark. So following unconventional path, every parent probably has this dream of our children launching off into the world and finding their space. So I don't know if there is a way for us to kind of persuade them or highly encourage our children to follow a certain type of path because they will have to decide for themselves what their path is. And I know this from experience. I have two 7-year-olds, and they just don't know. They just don't follow what you ask them to do, right? They have their own
Yeah.
way of looking at the world. But if you want to persuade people to kind of look at a different perspective, probably I would say education is one thing. Give them information that they might be able to use in order to make their decisions about certain things. I would say exposure to other people that are either where you want them to be or kind of doing what you think will be a good thing for them. But again, ultimately, at the end of the day, individuals have our own path and we have our own space to take in the world. And we will just gravitate towards that. But like I said, it would be good to expose the children to what it is that you want them to do so that then they can decide for themselves, is this actually something that I do want, which might be a very great surprise, or they will decide, you know what, I've seen it, I've touched it, I've smelled it, it's not for me. And then it's an informed decision as opposed to, oh, this is what my mother wants, I don't want it. So
Yeah,
I don't know
fantastic.
if that
Yeah.
answers the question. Hopefully
Yes,
that
yes.
was
I,
what
I
they
I
were
was
looking
just
for.
gonna re-echo that. I was gonna re-echo what you just said because that's really super instructive, and I think it does answer it. So depending on what you want, what are the tips you have to start early. You have to get the education on early. You have to get the exposures on early. You have to put them in the rooms. I mean, when people talk about mentors, when people talk about, oh, I saw this person playing, I probably saw the person on TV, or my mom and dad took me to that concert, or when I heard this person's speech, make a speech, he was interviewed, that's what resonated with me, and that's really what I want to become. And the children that we have now, they are very, very self-aware. They tend to be articulate about when they want to say yes and when they want to say no. So there's no in between for them. So I just think that just that engagement, early on engagement, putting them in the spaces that you want them to be, allowing them to blossom within that space, and just making sure that there is intentionality in in um, in 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 them growing up. Intentionality in them learning the values, and the cultural traits that you want them. That you have to be intentional about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Anbern,
And
you're
if
going to say something?
yes, if I could interject some resources that might be helpful. J.B. Weiner just came up with a book called Quest for Legitimacy. It's about the next generation and how they can take their space in the world. That's a great book. There is another book by Dennis Jaffe, Jim Grubman, and Kristen Kefler. It's about Wealth 3.0 and how our an understanding of what the next generation's place will be. And I really like, I haven't finished reading the book, but what I really like about it is it's really taking a focus on positive psychology, and instead of this fear of, oh, this wealth, becoming like a box for which we from behind we hide, it becomes more of like a tool that lets us out, let us be in the world. And it necessarily, with that perspective, is the idea of letting our children do kind of develop a sense of self away from us and away from the wealth, so that they kind of get a better sense of what they really are capable of, and they get that sense of confidence. And then hopefully they come back to the family and say, this is how I can contribute. But without that experience, it's kind of hard for the children to kind of have that identity.
Yeah, fantastic. Those two books are super fantastic. Jamie Weiner on the on his book, as well as Dennis Jaffe, Grubman, and Christine on Wealth 3.0. They're actually
Yes.
fantastic books. So it's just about employing positive psychology to ensure that you engender that environment that you want the next gen to thrive in, and you allow them to actually thrive. So it's not from a position of fear, but actually from a position of, you know what, go and excel. Whatever you want to do, go out there and excel. And even if you have to find your way back into the family, the whatever it is, whether the family business, you're not really interested and all that, but the bottom line is you could actually create what would interest you, and we as a family would back you up with that as well. So I think that's just very, very instructive and very, very important in this time and age.